I'm Ray. This is Phil.
Hello.
You're listening to the Metal Minutia podcast, where two heavy metal enthusiasts attempt to talk about heavy metal in far too much detail.
An attempt we do.
Yes.
No one can say we do not attempt.
Yeah.
We attempt.
We succeed. It's just whether it gets captured.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a good way to put it.
So yes, what have you been listening to?
I have been listening to Satan. Not the Dark Lord of the Underworld himself, but the human five-person incarnation of Satan, the British heavy metal band from the 1980s. This connects to our topic of the day later on, which I'll probably bring up again. But, the first Satan album was Caught in the Act in 1983, part of the new wave of British heavy metal movement, definitely at the tail end of that. And after much chaos and lineup changes and name changes, etc. and so forth, I won't get into that now. 30 years later, they bounced back in 2013 with Life Sentence on Listenable Records. And for my money, the return of Satan is really the bulk of the work. It's really, where they absolutely came into their own. You can throw around words like legacy and nostalgia act, but for my money, this is absolutely where it is. Like the last 3 or 4 albums they've done in the last 10 years, and specifically Life Sentence and the follow-up Atom by Atom, just killer stuff. And I've been revisiting that.
Yeah, I remember the 2019 album, 2018 album.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the name, but I remember that being a real killer one.
Yeah, that would be Cruel Magic.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
But they're like Blind Guardian covered them on Somewhere Far Beyond.
Wow.
On one of the many bonus tracks on that CD.
Oh, I'd totally forgotten that.
Doomsday Clock or something.
Somewhere Far Beyond. Oh, I reckon it would have been Trial by Fire. Trail by Fire. One of the fires. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
They got.
Oh, wow. I'd totally forgotten that.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a Blind Guardian song.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, very cool.
I would hazard when I heard that the original time, I probably just would have thought, oh, it's just an extra Blind Guardian.
Yeah, it's weird that they put this after the Queen cover.
Yeah. Yeah. Spread your wings and then another random song about Satan.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, and death, individual thought patterns.
Yep.
For no reason, not relevant at all, but just
because it's cool.
Because it's cool, because it's rad. Death are one of those bands where your favorite is whichever one you're listening to at the time, because they've got their own individual characters. They've got something for every occasion. If every occasion you need a face ripping guitar solo, that's they've got it.
Yeah,
ready to go.
Plenty of them. Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Action-packed album, Individual Thought Patterns. It's just entertaining wall to wall. Grabs you by the throat.
Yep.
Yeah, good stuff.
I'll give it a crack this over.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, I've been on... Rotting Christ had a new album out I want to say maybe a month or two ago, which I was listening to that a bunch today, actually. But yeah, just generally been listening to that.
How far into that career is that, Rotting Christ? They're like...
I think 30 years.
Yeah, epic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so they were just doing their 30... Maybe it's 31, but yeah, they've basically been doing their 30-year tour at the moment when they were out in Oz. What was it, April or early May?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, they're a band that unusually has the same drummer as they've always had, because they're Sarkis, like it's the two brothers, the Tollus brothers.
Yeah.
Guitarist, vocalist, and the drummer. So, but normally bands would change out the drummer.
Absolutely.
So they've had to, not that they're ever a super quick band, but they've dialed back the blast beats and the tempos a little bit over time, and you can probably chart their age inversely against their speed.
Yeah, I mean, historically speaking, that drummer has survived. Like, he's going against the odds, you know? Yeah. Being a drummer in a heavy metal band, like, you've got a certain career life expectancy. Yeah. And in the case of Spinal Tap, actual life expectancy.
Indeed. But yeah, also it's a new album I saw yesterday. Gave it a quick spin. It hasn't grabbed me yet.
Yeah.
A little poppy, I think, I don't know, maybe it'll grab me.
Bit poppy. Shots fired.
Yeah, I don't know. It just, just a bit too happy.
Yeah, okay.
That's not really what I'm after. And that tarot one that you've spoken about on previous episodes, I've given that a solid listen, and you were right.
Awesome.
It is excellent.
Yeah. Glimpse of the Dawn. Yeah,
Actually,
killer.
Book of Souls is one I revisited after our last chat.
Yeah.
I forgot that it was a double disc.
Yeah.
It is a long album.
Yeah.
But I stand by Empire of the Clouds, Empire of the Sky, whatever. That's the 18-minute song. Still good. I don't. Yeah. No.
It's actually still playing now. In when you started, it's still going.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's been album-wise the main things. Some gigs coming up.
Yeah.
So I mentioned the other day about Ulcerate Pestilential Shadows, and I confirmed that, I read the poster. Alters is on that tour.
Nice one.
Good. Due diligence. So that's
excellent.
August 1st at the SB in Melbourne, and, look for your local city either side. The next day in Melbourne, we've got a nice little double header, Thursday, Friday, with Disentombed, Abramelin, Isua, and Gutless at Max Watts.
Yeah, that's heavy as hell.
Yeah.
That's going to be a heavy night of extreme heavy metal in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
And some festivals coming up in Australia. The sort of underground fests are kind of pretty cool here, I think. Storm Rider in Perth, which, my brother puts on, so there's a little bit of a bias perhaps, but I know he's my brother, so I do give him shit. So,
yeah.
I think we break even.
Yeah, balances out. Can you tell me more about Storm Rider? Do you know any bands on, or like what the overall ethos of Storm Rider Festival is?
It's typically like heavy metal, power metal,
yeah,
traditional, maybe a bit of thrash or whatever.
Yeah, cool.
It does vary a little bit, but not often. But it's the 10th year.
Yeah. Oh wow. Year. Yeah. Excellent.
So Stu's been working hard on that for a long time.
Congratulations, Stu.
I assume some of that will be playing because if you put the festival on, you can put your band on it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
If you're doing all the work, you might as well.
Why else would you?
Yeah.
Why else do anything?
But I think this is the first year it's a 2-night affair. Usually it's a 1-dayer.
Yeah, right. Cool.
It's
great name too, Storm Rider.
Yeah.
That's killer.
That's an Amplifier Bar in Perth, which is a good venue. If you have you been to Perth for a gig?
I have been to Perth for a gig a very long time ago. I went to, I want to say the Metro, but every city has a Metro, so I don't.
It was a train station.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I went to a train station for a gig, and it was wild. I'm pretty sure it was the Metro. This is like late 2000s, maybe 2008, 2009-ish. So. Yep. I went to Perth. That's the only musical experience I've had over there.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And in Canberra, we've got Essence Festival. This is the first time it's happening. Which is a bit more of a extreme and art festival. Dan Nahum's putting it on, who, actually, I'm pretty sure Alters is playing. He's drumming in Alters these days. Maybe a few bands he's in will be playing. But yeah, that looks like a bit of a killer lineup. The Basement, I believe. Abramelin will be there. Midnight Odyssey, Spire, The Veil.
Sick. The Veil. Excellent.
Yeah. But that's another 2-dayer.
Yeah, rad. The Veil are a great band. I don't know how they fit so well in all the things that they do, but they just do, even though they're kind of like they're anachronistic and also anti-genre in a way. That makes sense? Like they've kind of like they've like got this 80s kind of goth feeling, even though it doesn't sound like that. It feels like that because they kind of sound like they're from the 60s. Like they've kind of got a pop psych vibe. And then, but because of this underlying darkness, they feel at home on these really heavy bills. It's no easy feat.
Absolutely. And they've got a keys player now.
Oh, cool.
They used Makes to, sense. Probably, I think, pre-COVID, they were sort of more of a 5-piece.
Yep.
And then they trimmed back to a 3, and now they've expanded back out to a 4.
Right.
They could have been a 6-piece even.
Yeah.
Pretty sure just a 5.
Yeah, right.
I think I'm adding a violin that didn't exist. But yeah, certainly keys will make a big difference. They've been playing a few shows up in Sydney, but I haven't been able to see them obviously. But looking forward to catch them 27th to 28th of September in Canberra. That'll be a good weekend away.
Yeah, awesome. That's at Essence. They're playing Essence.
Yeah,
Essence, gotcha.
Yeah.
Right.
There's about 30 artists.
Yeah.
Sort of synth noise to black metal to whatever. It's broad range, which will be really cool. I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be something hopefully people support strongly.
Yeah, awesome.
And finally, Steel Assassins. 8th and 9th of November, which we'll talk about a bit more as we get closer to it. But that's going to be a ripping festival. As always, Dave Balfour will pull out all stops.
Yeah, that's going to be an epic weekend, and one of the greats for the Australian metal scene, I think. Predominantly power, progressive, hard rock kind of over the years, but does stray outside of those lines, to fantastic effect. Like and he's really, the last few years especially, the lineups are really coming into its own, having really cool lineups, and the vibe. I mean, last year the vibe was great at the Bridge Hotel, so I've no doubt that a similar, if not better, experience will be repeated this year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's have a quick break and then we'll get into the main one.
Very good, sir.
And we are back on the Metal Minutia podcast. So today's topic, we are talking about whether we are in the best decade in history for heavy metal. And we should probably clarify that. Because that's in terms of being a fan of heavy metal. We're not talking about the best time of heavy metal being made.
Okay, so specifically, are we? I don't think so. I think we should, like you said, we should stick with...
So make sure we're on the same...
We absolutely should, yeah. For clarity's sake and for the sake of this argument, absolutely. Like, we want to know, we want to explore, as a fan, or as a witness to culture. Yeah. Not about people who are artists or people who are in it commercially. If you're just a fan, a punter, or someone who witnesses how these cultures and histories play out, do we live in the best time for heavy metal, or is a previous decade or time or era the ultimate ideal, or is the best yet to come?
Yes.
That is the question we pose.
So we're the options are 1970s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s, right? Or are we... So we are speculating a little bit on the next 6 years being...
Because we're in the midst.
We're in the midst.
As we move into the 5th decade, is that right? Let's say for clarity, 1970 is the beginning of heavy metal.
Yeah.
Not that there weren't precursors, of course.
We're not going to include the 60s. It's very hard to argue that the 60s is the best.
Very hard to argue. Not that it couldn't be argued, but it would be difficult to argue. 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. So we're moving into the sixth decade of heavy metal on the planet.
How lucky.
And how lucky. Yeah, you're darn right. Darn right. It's wild to think that. And I suppose it's easiest to group it into decades, of course. And for that argument, I mean, would you like to start? Where do you go? Where do you go immediately when this question is asked of you?
Well, from the easy thing is with recorded music, in the wise words of Yngwie Malmsteen, more is more.
Yeah.
And we have more now than we've ever had.
And who can argue with Yngwie Malmsteen? End of podcast episode.
Only fools.
Only fools.
But yeah, like you might argue that older bands, you don't like their new albums or whatever. But you don't have to listen to them. Or, newer bands, maybe you only like a certain style of music which was in vogue at the early 90s. I don't know. Pick your poison. But that still all exists. Plus more stuff that you can listen to or ignore at your whim. Yeah.
As a solid point, in modern times, the connectivity and the access is simply unprecedented. We have access to all the history of heavy metal, quite literally at the touch of your iPhone button.
Yep.
And now that iPhones don't have buttons anymore,
it's even easier.
Thank God they got rid of that absolutely egregious time waste. So now that they don't have the button in the middle of the iPhone anymore, because I don't have time for buttons.
Yeah, we've cut the corners.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now we just...
Straight into it.
Yeah, you can think something, and within 4 seconds, you're listening to it right away. Like, you've got... That access is unprecedented, and it's hard to argue with that kind of... But, I mean, carry on. Sorry.
So that's and I don't think there's obviously bands we can't see anymore from a live music perspective, which is the downside of today, I suppose. There's things like you'll never see Dio play. The best you could hope for, I guess, if that's the right word, is a Ripper Owens tribute to Dio. Like you're not going to see Rainbow play, or you're not going to see. I think Black Sabbath going to do one last show or whatever. It's been rumored, but you can't watch Black Sabbath play.
Yeah,
but for that trade-off of like, well, if you pick the 70s, then you don't have any Black Sabbath album after.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, pick your poison. It's your trade-off there. You know, everything has a price. About you trade something in, and you're gaining another thing. I think that's let's take the 80s for example. Right? Let's be cliche here and say if the 80s is the ultimate ideal for being a fan of heavy metal. You know, it's the explosion of heavy metal. It's omnipresent. It's popular. It's downright commercial. It's absolutely everywhere, and it's dangerous. You know, parents are afraid. You know, kids are mystified. You know, like it would be hard to imagine that the kind of magic that was in the air at the time. Like we can idealize it, sure, but just being amongst it. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole different. You know, someone might say, "Well, I'd trade it in if I could have been there," or if someone from there, I've heard remarks say, "No, I can't. I trade in your iPhone. You know, get your button and your iPhone out of here."
Yeah. Yep.
The 80s was the time.
It's one of those. Explore. Yeah, nostalgia is a powerful drug, I suppose. Like the romanticism of the tape trading era and that sort of thing.
Keep your tapes.
Yeah.
I don't like cassette tapes. I'll trade you all my cassette tapes for your glorious sounding compact discs.
Yeah.
There, I said it.
But people do sort of romanticize the thing. But particularly in Australia, how connected to the global scene could you have been, or like how easy would it? How many people? No doubt there are people, and I know people that were thoroughly connected to different scenes when they were young via that sort of tape trading world, but not everyone was. Yeah, it's like a few people that had to put in a lot of work, I'm sure, to
Yeah, the geographical thing absolutely comes into play. Like you could argue that you might have been in a certain suburb in California and, you don't have community radio there or whatever, and you don't have your crazy older brother, feeding your Sabbath albums and whatever. Like you're basically in another world. You could argue that geography trumps your place in the temporal spectrum at that point, Like...
Russia probably wouldn't have been the space for heavy metal fans.
No, I don't imagine so. Yeah, so it's not really clear cut. It's saying, if I was around in the 80s, then, all my prayers would be answered.
Yeah, but even what year do you pick?
See, now, well, okay, this is what we're here for. Right? The podcast isn't called Meta Minutia for no reason.
You can spend a week in 1981 or 1987. Which do you take?
Oh, yeah.
It's like...
Well, I could,
are things better because we've had time to, like... If Number of the Beast came out today... You're back in time.
Yeah.
Would you have been excited about it as you should have been?
Yeah, man. Like, that is just unquantifiable.
Yeah.
That's a great question, but, like... I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Number of the Beast did come out last year. Like the Ram album, that came out last year was, The Throne Within. It's probably a few years ago now, but that's unbelievable heavy metal and choruses that Accept Wish they wrote, in the 90s. But yeah, that's what I mean about in the 80s or 70s, if you want to say. It's the explosion, it's the newness, it's how novel and exciting it is.
Yeah, is that more about you and I, really? We probably don't lean into the more modern metal too much. Because there is a lot of, every sort of decade has this explosion of new types of metal, whether it be, I guess, sort of metalcore, deathcore is the...
Yep.
Actually, I don't even know what...
that was Don't pretend you know.
That was probably 10 years ago.
Don't pretend you know what's going on. I take your point, though. Carry on.
Is it just because...
Yeah. You're politely asking... Are we just cranky old men? Like, are we moving into our totally cranky old men phase where it's just like, oh man, the early stuff's the best?
Yeah. Well, we talked about that already.
Yeah, we totally did.
What about the fact that the trade-off of like people actually buying albums, so the amount of albums you could get access to was pretty limited.
Yeah.
By your own.
Yep.
Sort of means, I suppose.
Absolutely, finances and proximity to a good record store.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So, like, how many bands would you have been able to discover?
Yeah, that's a.
Would you have
question.
known about Satan?
Yeah, exactly. Excellent question. Yeah, that's huge because there's folk who we speak to who are 20, 30 years older than us. And they will say, oh, of course, Maiden, Priest, it was all happening and it was very exciting. But, they've missed whatever band it may be, Satan or late 80s, Blind Guardian or whatever. It's like, man, that band totally went past me. Like, there's no way, I didn't know anyone was listening to them and, they weren't on Triple M. So, that's, you're absolutely right. That's a huge thing. I would wager that even if when you did live at that time, that you were still... what do you call it? Like your vision was still had
somewhat
a parameter.
narrowed.
Like, narrow. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. By your geography and your means. There is something I wanted to talk to you about when it comes to. We're basically talking about the internet versus everything, right? It kind of comes to that point where it's just like
it's more than that.
It is a bit more than that.
Yeah.
I do want to say something about in the digital age, however, versus say the early 90s or the 70s, whatever you want to say. Now, compare it to like a good TV show. If you're watching if you've got a good TV show, like a classic TV show like The Sopranos or like MacGyver. Say you've got MacGyver, right?
Yeah.
The spiritual successor to The Sopranos, as we know, MacGyver.
Was it MacGyver was first?
Yeah, predecessor. That's what I meant to say. This is the spiritual predecessor.
Yep.
Richard Dean Anderson.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing how this ties in.
Yeah. Me too. All right, you've got a TV show that you're watching 1 hour episode once a week over 5 or 6 years.
Was MacGyver an hour long?
I should hope not because
it's a lot of paper clips.
It's a lot of paper clips. Yeah, I should hope not. All right, but for argument's sake, you're watching a TV show half an hour or an hour once a week for over 5 or 6 years. By the time you get to the third or fourth year, wherever you might be in your station in life, a few years ago, you were in a different relationship, you had a different boyfriend, different girlfriend, you had a different job, what have you. If you're committed to this TV show and you get to year 4 or 5, and one of the main characters dies, or a relationship falls apart, or whatever it may be, or conversely, like someone gets together, which you've been waiting for a long time. Okay, that means so much more to you then because of what you've been through with the show.
Yep.
Like you've changed as a person as well, and even if you haven't, you've got things in your life that you can reference and be nostalgic about.
Sure.
Whatever it might be. That's what it's like when you're a fan of a band and they release an album every couple of years.
Yeah.
And you can the parallel there is that you look back where you were when you heard the first one. They're still doing things you like. You're a different person now, but you've grown with them. They've come along with the ride, or you're like part of the story there. That's a whole different experience than like binging 40 episodes of MacGyver. I gotta stop saying that. No, that's a whole different experience because you've changed with it, and it means so much more to you at that time. And I want to be specific here. I'm not saying that like, oh, you had to be there when Ride the Lightning come out. You know, I say this in sympathy for all of us, like for new fans or older fans who didn't get into the band at the time. There's nothing like that. There's nothing like being a fan of a band across 8 years and hearing the albums as they come out. Like you just cannot substitute that kind of experience in time.
Yeah, I was actually back to Rotting Crust. I was thinking about when I thought their previous album, Heretics, had only been a couple of years ago. It turns out it was 2019.
Yeah, right. That's the thing that Ram one was as well, like a couple of years ago. So,
5 years. But yeah, like I think that's their 13th album or something like that.
Yeah.
You get 13 albums in one block and say, "Oh, consume that," and
make sense of that.
Yeah, you can't. Given that, a band I've listened to for 20 years or something, it's a bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Once every 5 years, isn't that much new material?
Yeah. That's a huge thing. Yeah, absolutely. Like, if you're just given access to all of it right now, right here, you've got no context, no guide. You've just it's kind of it almost becomes meaningless. It almost becomes like it's information overload. All the bits don't mean anything anymore because you can't put them in their place contextually. So
you're trying to say that more isn't more?
Yeah. Oh my God. Maybe that's what I'm saying.
You're arguing with Malmsteen.
Oh my God. Maybe more isn't more. Oh man.
You weren't ready for that.
I was not ready for that. Yeah. Maybe more isn't more.
What about from a live music perspective? Sure, there's some bands that we can't see anymore, but I think generally, obviously I wasn't going to gigs in 1988, but I feel like more bands...
Why not, you poser? Loser nerd?
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah. No one was going to Perth.
Yep.
Perth people say nothing's changed.
Yeah.
But yeah, the amount of gigs that you can go to now feels like it wouldn't have been the case. Like airfares weren't, they're a little bit expensive now compared to what probably 2018, 2019 was, or pre-COVID. But, air travel in 80s and 90s was expensive.
Yeah.
How many bands were touring? Like people talk about like Slayer and Maiden in the early 90s and that kind of thing. But then there was a big gap.
Yeah.
Like Maiden didn't come back till 08. And, like...
Yeah, absolutely.
You didn't get a lot of chances. And I feel like we're, in a live music regard, quite spoiled now.
Yeah, definitely. Like, just in this last year alone, we've seen bands here like Sixith and Riot City. Like, and that's like two extremes of it. Like Sixith from the 1980s and Riot City from the last 5 years or so. I just whenever I'm still surprised. Like I look at these flyers, I'm still surprised. I'm like, how is this happening? How are they making this work? And you're absolutely right.
And you look at things like the Hellfest lineup now, where it seems like every band in the world is playing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not the biggest festival.
Yeah.
Like that scene wasn't there. Like you had Monsters of Rock and those types of things, but it wasn't the same kind of...
No, it wasn't. Monsters of Rock were they were like 5 or 6 band lineups. They actually weren't that...
And were they every year or every couple of years?
I think that was staggered. I think that was every couple of years. I think it was Reading and then Monsters of Rock took over from Reading. I might be wrong, but I think that's...
Yeah, okay.
I think, like kind of same mob running it, but they were trying to update it, etc., because it fell by the wayside in the early 80s.
But like right, you couldn't just get on a plane to Europe and know that, Hellfest always this weekend, Bloodstock's this weekend, Party Sounds this weekend, Varkins this weekend. If you want to, like you can do whatever you want. And you don't even need to know the lineup because it's going to be pretty good. And you're going to have if the band played this year, they're probably not playing next year. But other than that,
I suppose now you've touched on something that's important as well to think of, is that you're talking about a specific kind of fan as well. So once you get to a certain stage of being a fan at a certain point, that's another thing about these festivals, is that they're pretty accepting of... The punters are pretty accepting of a wide range of heavy metal. Hellfest is really diverse. That's credit to the heavy metal community, like as fans, like being like, I'll go to Hellfest. I'm probably only going to watch 5 bands, but like, I'll go because it's going to be a great weekend or what have you. You know, so that's a certain kind of heavy metal fan now. That's a certain kind of fandom in general.
And also I guess the types of people that would get on a plane for 20 hours to go and watch it. It has been remarked to me that not everyone would do that. I was like, what do you mean?
The type of insanity required for...
Even the, going to Sydney for a gig, people... Aren't they playing in Melbourne? Like, oh, yeah, but I get to watch them both nights this time. But why?
They're playing different songs? Nah.
Well, I don't know, maybe.
It hasn't happened yet. Oh, man. Yeah.
Anything could happen.
Yeah.
What about from a music creation perspective? And I'm not talking about your bands in particular or anything, but the fact that from creating... This is probably the most efficient time to be able to create music. I know people have been saying for, probably 10, 15 years that any person with a laptop and a MacBook and GarageBand, you can make an album in your bedroom in a weekend, which I suspect anyone that says that and means it probably has never made an album or used GarageBand.
Yep. I would agree. I would wager. I would agree.
But you can create music pretty cost effectively now where and release it, being able to release it digitally and it being socially acceptable, I suppose. So like in 2011, if you were to make an album and it wasn't available on CD, no one took it seriously. Well, people still bought CDs pretty regularly back then. But yeah, a case of, for probably a few $100s of mixing and mastering, depending on what skills you have yourself or what you can do yourself, you can probably get an album done to an extent. Or could, if you, it could be more than that, depending on your situation. But you don't have to press it, which is a big upfront cost, which you hope to recoup. And you have to store and
keep 400 copies in your cupboard forever.
Yes. Yeah. How do you have any thoughts around that from a music creation and what that might mean as far as people might do sort of fun side project or arty side project type things they wouldn't be able to do otherwise?
All right. Well, now we're veering into being an artist in this time. Like
as a consumer, like,
as a consumer,
do you prefer that like artists can do this?
Okay.
I guess is how I want to phrase it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, of course, I prefer that, but I mean that because I prefer it because I'm happy for people to be able to create. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
If someone's creating, it means they're doing something that's overall positive for the people around them and the world around them, like without getting too lovey-dovey and pretentious.
Yeah.
All creation is good. Like when someone's working on something, that's a positive way to express whatever's going on. So I think it's wonderful. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That it's quote unquote easy to do, and the accessibility to the equipment and the resources is there.
I will caveat, I'm saying easier.
Yeah, easier. Easy-ish.
Easy. There is still a lot to it, and I wouldn't.
It's the worst. Never try it ever. But as a fan, like I just love CDs and I love albums and I like looking at them. And there's a bunch of albums that I've just haven't been able to collect because there's not physically enough copies in the world. And do I still love them and consider them albums? Absolutely. Of course. But
so maybe 2011's your peak time.
Yeah, maybe. maybe that was the...
Because then it's the digital world exists, so you can be aware of them easily enough.
Yeah,
they're promoted. There's YouTube for film clips and that sort of thing. But
still,
there's more.
Yeah, and
it's in your preferred format.
Yeah, that's an excellent call actually. And you touched on something which I wanted to mention. Is that I'm grateful that I got into music at a time in that crossover period when the digital was coming about, so I could still had access to find out that things existed at all. But I still had to go to the library and dial up to the dial up to Yahoo and search for bands that sound like Megadeth. And that was it. Those were my resources. And then I'd still have to go to JB Hi-Fi and buy CDs with my money from my job flipping burgers. This all just sounds really cliche, but it's just
no,
you know. And that's I'm grateful for that because I got into heavy metal like kind of it was staggered. You know, I was shown certain things and I had context for when I listened to certain albums, etc. So maybe 2011 was the ultimate time to be heavy metal. In fact, I went to 70,000 Tons of Metal that year as well, and I remember just being like, "Whoa, man!"
Well, actually, you think about the last decade.
Yeah.
So pre-COVID.
Yep.
So the festivals we've spoken about all happening.
Yep.
Black Sabbath was still around then. You could have still seen Black Sabbath.
Yeah, I think I did actually. Yeah, maybe 2012-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got all the pros. The latter half of the decade. Spotify kind of took over, but people were still probably making CDs through the majority of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and vinyl was probably coming back in around then as well. That's probably early.
There was a little bit of a crossover of those two.
Yeah. Man, that's bizarre.
Yeah, the shutdowns of various things. I feel like Sydney had already... I lived in Sydney back then. That had the lockout laws, which had made local live music a bit tough, and we'd lost a fair few venues in that decade.
Yeah.
So I remember like the Gaelic Club and a few others were sort of the big... Well, not the big ones, but the regular ones.
Yeah, the reliable ones.
Yeah, and they weren't around anymore by the sort of middle of the decade.
Yeah.
End of the decade. But yeah, then, COVID sort of killed off a lot of things.
Yeah.
It'd be weird if a pandemic made things better. But
yeah, it would actually. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe we had a lot of tours then because Loud Park was really big.
Yeah.
And we'd always get... In Australia, we'd get the
bands who could afford to buy the extra.
Yeah, or the promoters that could get them for the that one extra leg.
Yeah, gotcha.
I don't know. Is Loud Park back? I haven't
heard of it recently, so
hopefully it comes back or is back, and we just haven't been across it.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It is in Japan, so it's not really
not right around the corner as such.
No, it's a flight.
Yeah. That's interesting you say that, though. Yeah, yeah. Are you making the argument that... Are you arriving there with me, or are you saying that possibly for me, like this was the decade,
I think possibly for me as well. I was thinking about it this morning. I thought I should put some serious thought into this topic we're going to discuss in detail and write some notes. Rather than just wing it.
Yeah.
But also, we were a bit younger then. So was there a bit more youthful
pep in our step?
Yeah.
As we remarked in an earlier episode, remember when you were young and you just put on some music and you were like, "Yeah, this is sick."
We weren't that young then.
That's 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Yeah. Is it? Are we already romanticizing the?
Yeah. Are we just picking that because we were now sort of through our late 20s and early 30s.
Oh, you had to be there, kids. You had to be there in 2014, man. That's where it all happened.
Yeah. Also, I feel like now, obviously the pandemic was fucked for artists generally, or a lot of the world generally, most of the world. But I feel like 2024 seems like, 2023, 2024 have both seemed like strong bounce backs. I feel like there's renewed enthusiasm for live music.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's just my own personal renewed enthusiasm, which had sort of waned a little bit over time. But I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, we're talking about new releases that we really dig as well, and from younger bands too. Like, in the last episode we were talking about Contact and Freeways from Canada.
Yep.
Yeah, younger bands like making albums that surprise us.
Yeah.
So if that's happening, especially to grizzly old cranky
old man that yell at clouds.
Old man that yell at clouds, if we're digging it, then yeah, of course.
Well, what I think is particularly good about probably the last 10 years, let's say that, like there's been enough of the nostalgia or retro type things have come through. There's been the retro thrash, the retro power metal that we sort of, all these things have kind of happened.
Yep.
And we're kind of at a stage where a lot of the subgenres have kind of matured to a point where there's kind of room for expansion into like, whether it be crossovers or just be more and more experimental, more and more progressive, I guess.
Definitely.
And I find that quite cool.
Yeah.
That probably is more, the type of music I like.
Yep.
That, it's not just rehashing stuff.
Yeah.
There's people pushing the boundaries more than ever, it seems to me.
Yeah, the time is right for these things.
Because, for a while it felt like it was just like get heavier, get faster. But then...
Yeah.
Then everything was like, let's be super shoegaze. And then... and now it's like...
Sometimes in the same album.
Yeah. And now it's kind of like, well, what if we had a melody and it was really heavy and it did this thing?
Get out. You're out of the band.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like there's space now where a lot of different things are happening.
Yeah.
And a lot of things can get a bit of oxygen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think genre is starting to mean a lot less to some younger bands, which is good because bands need to be able to experiment and do what they want, because we all know that playing by the rules only gets you so far.
Yeah.
And I
Rust in Peace already exists.
Yeah, exactly, right? And yet humanity carries on.
Yeah.
Trying in vain to top it.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's a point of pride as well, trying not to be nostalgic, or I don't want to be nostalgia's plaything. I own my position where I was randomly placed on the space-time continuum. I like to think it's like, I'm grateful to have seen a lot of legacy bands before they became legacy bands, and like heavy metal's sixth decade.
It's not a pretty nice spot as well, because we get a lot of tours are sort of marketed to people our ages now.
Yeah.
And it's like, 25 years since this album.
Who's laughing now?
Yeah.
Here's one for you cranky old guys.
Yeah. Remember that album from 1998?
Yeah.
Do you know how many years ago that was?
So young and full of hopes and dreams.
Yeah. So that's a cool thing as well. People are doing... There's a lot of the nostalgia tours, if you do want to indulge in nostalgia.
And of course, more power to you, why not?
Yeah,
why not? And the thing I do like about the nostalgia tours is that, as you know, I'm an album guy, and it's my favorite thing and my favorite medium, and that when emphasis is placed on that warms my heart, when like a show is marketed as being like, oh, it's this album, whatever, that reminds people of that album's statements, and I think it can't be overstated enough. That's just,
You know what I wish they would do, which kind of goes against what I said about albums, and that I like that there's a specific order.
Yeah.
But
hit me with it.
I like to be surprised at gigs.
Yeah.
I wonder what's going to be next.
Yeah.
Which you don't get.
Yeah.
So I'd say that if they're going to play like an hour and a half set and play a 40-minute album in its entirety, just like not like open with the first song, but not play the album start to finish and then other stuff afterwards.
Right.
Just like pepper it.
Yeah. Okay. A peppered approach.
Yeah.
What if they played it backwards?
No.
No?
No, that's the wrong way to play it.
That's the wrong way. I mean actually backwards, like playing every note in the chords in the wrong order. Why not backwards? Peppered? That's okay. That's fair.
Yeah. Because like you could just have like, a couple of songs and then like some of the other really good songs, and then because otherwise you get this sort of awkward back end of the set.
Yeah, okay.
Where they're like, oh, these are the other songs that you like.
Yeah.
But they would normally be in the middle.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
And then
that's totally fair.
Then you I don't know.
Yeah.
I only just thought of this then.
Yeah. It's totally fair.
Because then the encore, you know it's coming, but you don't know which order.
Yeah.
When's Hallowed Be Thy Name going to be in?
Yeah. Iron Maiden are always fine. They're always fine for... They never find themselves in that kind of trouble. I would wager that the main problem with playing albums from start to finish is if the first song is definitely your best song.
Yeah. There was Gravedigger. Are you a Gravedigger fan?
I am a passing fan of Gravedigger. Not.
Yeah, I've got like.
Yeah.
I want to say 10 Gravedigger albums.
Yep.
And they will write 4 excellent songs per album.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And at one point they did I think they played at Varken and they did Clans of War, Tunes of War, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, the mid-90s Scottish album from the German band.
Yeah.
They played that in its entirety at the festival.
Yeah.
And that album has 3 good songs.
Yeah.
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 And one of them's like in the middle.
Yeah.
Oh, man. It was a real sort of trudge to get to it.
Yeah. Yeah, what do you do? God. I don't know.
See, I don't know. There's only some albums that should be played start to finish.
Yeah.
In a live setting.
Yeah. You paint yourself into a corner. That's for darn sure. I can say, though, that the nostalgia thing, the albums, it does get people to shows. Like,
yeah. Oh, for sure.
And so, if it's a necessary evil, if you're not always in the mood for it, like, it gets people to shows, and it's
cool. If Jeff Tate tours...
Yeah.
Doing... I assume he makes music still.
Yeah. I reckon he does.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
If he... I'm not going to watch it unless he's doing a tour of one of the 3 albums of Queensryche that I really like.
Yeah, and that was unreal last year when he did that. Was that last year? That was killer. Early. He did Rage for Order and Empire.
Killer.
Yeah, that was absolutely unreal.
Yeah. Another thing about this idea generally, and this is a bit of a hackish comment that I remember hearing when I was young, and I guess it still gets thrown around. It's probably been thrown around for 30 or 40 years, but the young metalheads, where are they? And is it a case of, are we a dinosaur? Are we dying out? Are we, closer to the end than the start of heavy metal? In the sixth decade?
Yeah.
Or just even like guitar-based music?
Yeah. Oh, man, that's huge.
I feel like people play guitar still. I feel like it's as kind of popular as any. But yeah, I don't know. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
How many young metalheads how many young people do you know? What's the...
I actually don't think anyone's been born in 30...
How many 22-year-olds do you know? I don't...
Actually, playing a couple of bands with they're probably 24, 25 years old-ish.
Okay, that's young.
And having mates who like teach guitar, I know that they're always booked out. They've always got high school kids who want to learn the guitar.
When you were young, when you were sort of 20 to 25, that period, were there, in your broader social group, was what percentage of people would be musicians?
Yeah, good question. None. I was the only one.
Yeah,
I was probably the only metalhead as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's always been a pretty niche group. Like, there'd be, a few people. I generally played in bands with guys older than me.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, that's from 2 different parts of Australia, and we've had a very similar experience. We're of a similar age, and I would wager that that's the case now, even though like a guitar school might be booked out with however many students who want to learn to play the guitar, but they're probably from, throughout the neighbourhood. They've gathered in that place, and I think you're spot on. Like, for there to be like a wide social group of young musicians or musicians in that age, I don't think it's the case generally. And when you'd know from being at local gigs, there's a big age range. There's young people. There's people from 18 to, we've got friends in their 60s who come to these gigs and still metalheads. But they met there, or adjacent to, that's where they've come to know each other, is at these local gigs. So I don't think, it's not the social glue it is at the start. You find your way to it. Yeah, I think, and I wager that is still the case. Yeah,
because probably aside from a brief period in the 80s when heavy metal was the coolest thing in town.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been for
since
for the majority of its life.
Yeah.
And I don't think particularly black metal and that kind of thing, it's not meant to be.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
If it was super popular, then you're probably doing it a bit wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And I think that the internet and social media makes the world seem a lot smaller than it actually is. Like, even though you can open up your account and look at the page of your favorite band and see how many people are commenting and liking the same thing you're looking at. But within the square mileage of your town, you're still the only one there. You know. Whereas in the 1980s, literally, they were playing Motley Crue on the radio. Yeah. In Kmart or whatever. So it will never be at that level again.
No. And nor should it.
Nor should it be. Nor should it be, man.
Yeah.
How did we get to that point you were talking about?
I was saying whether the idea that we might be dying out as
yeah.
But I think it's just been there's just never been many of us because that's the idea. And you look at the big festivals and you see a sea of people, or you look at the Iron Maiden will come here and play at the arena. Yeah. And you think, but the reality is people don't go much deeper than that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they turn out for the big festivals because it's a big event.
Yeah.
But they're not going to, just because they like Iron Maiden doesn't mean.
Yeah.
They probably would like Blind Guardian.
Yeah.
But are they going to search them out or
are they going to go home and order 14 Gravedigger albums and get to know those 4 good songs?
Yeah. Which are very good.
No, I don't think so. And that's not a dig at Gravedigger. Yeah, I think that is the case. The popularity of heavy metal.
It feels like it's
kind of a false.
Yeah, the false metric.
Yeah,
it feels more or less as popular as it's ever been. It feels like there's more or less. Well, it feels like probably more bands than there's ever been. There's more of it than there's ever been. Mm-hmm. It's just maybe not as many places to play it as there once was, but
yeah.
I don't know. Certainly Melbourne doesn't have a shortage, but maybe other cities have a bit more of a shortage. But
yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's maybe a little bit of the local bias. But yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
So is now the best time?
Is now the best time? See, I still. Even though we've stacked this evidence,
are you still leaning back to 1980s or the 2010s?
It's.
But 1990s is surely your spot because you love CDs.
Yes, that's true, and
you would have never known what they were. You'd maybe see one.
Yeah,
you wouldn't have been able to afford it.
No. Yeah,
you wouldn't. You would have hated it because it's a newfangled thing that you can't have.
Yeah, you're right.
And it doesn't even come in any packaging. This tiny little thing I'm getting.
Yeah.
For my whatever cost was.
I think what I know now is that you just can't know.
If you only had 1980s heavy metal, then you wouldn't have Rust in Peace.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have Painkiller.
Yeah, that's true.
You wouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean, and there's bands that have come into their own in the last 20 years that are some of my favourite bands of all time. You
wouldn't have the late Satan albums.
Yeah, absolutely. They wouldn't have Satan's Best Era, And I'm a huge prog rock fan, and Opeth are one of my favourite bands. And so for me, they've only come into their own in the last 8 or 10 years, and that's probably blasphemous to a lot of people. I like all of Opeth's catalogue, but I'm a huge fan of the prog rock stuff, which has happened in the last decade. And so... yeah, that's huge. That wouldn't exist. But I just want to clarify that it's not about the era or the aesthetic or the accessibility that makes the past more ideal to me. Yep. It's the experience of experiencing it as it happens.
Yeah.
That's what I long for. That's what we're elegizing now. That's what we're saying goodbye to. Is that's gone.
Yeah. I just wonder if it would have been very exciting, but would it have felt unless you were in San Francisco or wherever, wherever the scene was exploding for that at that point in time. If, would it have felt like it's almost in a bit slow motion? It's like, oh, this album, you know, because it's the monthly magazine that you're getting to read about the new heavy metal, whatever. Yeah.
I don't know. What's my job at the time? You know, my
you're a high school student.
Am I a high school student? I'm mowing lawns on the weekend. You know, what are the hours? You know?
All right, Nigel.
No, I take your point.
Because if you were a musician then, I totally agree. That would have been like a wild time to be able to, you know, the sort of the tours that people were doing across America and that sort of thing would have been obviously electric. But are you visiting these towns, like, you know, if you're a person in these towns or cities that get the gig comes through and you get the excitement, and then do you not get anything for 9 months?
Yeah. That's the geography thing we were talking about, right? Like it's all well and good to say that ideally, you know, you're physically there, but in actual fact, the experience is a lot different than we're making it out to be.
Potentially. Maybe it was awesome. Like real cheap beers.
Maybe I made heaps of money on my last lawn mowing job.
Yeah.
You got me.
Yep.
Agree to disagree. Are we disagreeing? I don't know.
Well, so you're taking the 1980s as your final?
No, I'm what do you call it? I'm undecided, you know.
Undecided. Okay.
Yeah, I'm undecided. That's what's happening. I don't know. Is that allowed? I don't know if that's allowed in this podcast. Are we allowed, you know, negative and affirmative? Like, what's going on here? Do we have to draw a conclusion, or
I don't think we have to.
We don't have to.
No.
How about this? I'll tell you that I'm grateful for my position. I really am. Like, I've had a great upbringing and relationship with heavy metal over the last 30 years. So,
what's your intro to heavy metal? Which I think is probably relevant to this discussion.
Yeah, certainly. I'm 10 years old and I hear Ride the Lightning.
Who played Ride the Lightning to you when you were 10 years old?
My older brother borrowed the CD from his high school friend.
Yep.
And brought it home.
How much older is he?
3 years? He's 5 years older than me.
Okay,
15. So he's 15-ish.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect Ride the Lightning age.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he brings home Ride the Lightning. And at this time in my life, I've already heard, you know, Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin and The Doors. So I know that there's something out there. I was like, man, this is pretty cool. I can really get into this. What's going on here? And then I hear Ride the Lightning, and I'm dumbfounded. I'm absolutely agog. I'm like, what is this music from another dimension? This is absolutely, and that was it. That was absolutely it. I could go further, or we'll leave it there for now. Maybe we'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to leave it. So
yourself?
So when I was probably, what year did the Black Album came out? 92?
92, 91.
Yeah. So I remember being I was in year 1. I can place this because I lived in Adelaide at the time. I only lived in Adelaide for a year.
Yep.
So around that time, Metallica's Black Album, Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, and Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell 2.
Love it.
They were like the biggest albums going around.
Yeah, what a triple threat.
Quadruple.
Yeah, really, yeah.
So I just remember like that was all that was on because we used to get up and me and my 2 older brothers used to get up and watch Rage in the morning. Yeah. And it would just be
glorious.
And when you, I guess, listen to that at 6...
Yeah.
By the time you're 16, you want something a bit heavier.
Yeah. So you get Bat Out of Hell 3, obviously.
Well, that didn't come out till... Not a bad album, that one, actually. The Monsters Loose, it's called.
Awesome.
You didn't know that, was it?
I did know. You should have known.
There wasn't a 4, don't worry.
No. God damn.
All right. So, long story short, we've both had a good and... unregrettable, unforgettable,
unregrettable, and unforgettable.
Yeah, we've both enjoyed our time in heavy metal and hope it continues for a long time.
Yeah,
and I think net positive about the positive ideas about the future of heavy metal.
Definitely.
and naysayers
leave the hall.
Leave the hall.
Party on, guys.